This is Straight Talk Vermont with Linda Joy Sullivan, where we get it straight. Our featured guest today is Jay Walsh. Welcome, Jay.
Right, thank you.
So I would like everybody to know that today we are going to be looking at one of the topics particular to the Newport City municipality and the ongoing issue of charter amendment. We will look at some of the concerns. We will look at potential conflicts. We will hear what citizens have to say, and we will delve into it. And Jay Walsh has been kind enough to agree to come on board. Jay, you serve on one of the boards. You're a commissioner, right?
Yes, I serve on the planning board for the city and also the development review board.
And I would like to clarify today that Jay is here speaking not on behalf of the city and his capacity in those roles, but he is here as a resident, a taxpayer, just like you out there. So changing municipality constitutional charters, which is a city charter, okay, immediately upon taking office, can be highly concerning. So we have brand new local government in there, Jay, and it can say, hey, is this more of a political push, or do they have the experience of creating law? This is a monumental change because a charter is a foundational structure, and it belongs there to be a tool not for shifting political tides, but it doesn't, because it's there for a while, doesn't mean that it's outdated. Sure, there's always things that need to be looked at and changed, but that's a monumental lift. But I hear from what I've been seeing is this is more of, number one, a process concern.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm going to throw this at you, and I'm going to let you kind of run with where you want to go with this, because I know we've got a lot to discuss. Sure. So tell us what your concerns are, and for those residents who agree with you.
Well, I think, first and foremost, the charter and the laws that govern a small municipality like this are laws devised and approved by that group of citizens. It's the most intimate of all the laws in the state. We can't affect state law for the most part. We can't affect national law. I mean, we can vote on things that they allow us to, but this allows the citizens to devise the laws and the form of government that they want in their community. So their yes and no votes on particular issues are of the utmost importance. And looking at charter changes, when either the legislative body or the citizens find that there's some issues with that, then they need to come together and there needs to be open discussion as to what is wrong with this provision and how they would like to change it. None of that happened here. And the current council, what they did here was to just toss out, 100 years of law that has been voted on by the community and the citizens here, and for no reason discarded most of these that there's been no public issue with. And then to devise their own within a short number of weeks and replace all of these laws with their own concepts without any input from citizens in the devising of these laws to be addressed, and then did so right in the middle of the holiday season,
right,
when nobody's paying attention to that. They have kids home from school.
Snowbirds.
They have people out of town. They've got the busy holiday seasons to plan for. They have guests coming by. They don't have time to review such a massive amount of information and try to apply it to what they're losing from the old charter and what they're gaining. And then to be only allowed a single vote to change all of these laws when there's maybe a half a dozen that they agree with. Maybe there's a half a dozen that they do not. But they're being forced to take the bad with the good, which is the whole concept of bundling of laws, which is outlawed in 43 states. Vermont is not one of them and has that in their constitution, but that's 86% of the country, of the states in the country, ban this kind of consolidation of laws to be put before the public. There was no reason for this to be done in that fashion. There was no discussion at the council level as to whether these should be put to individual votes or a singular vote, which I believe the law clearly states that is not a provision that or an option that they can even employ. It clearly states that each provision is to be voted on individually so that the public can voice their opinion, and then those laws that pass become part of the charter. So that's the primary argument. I don't think it has anything to do with making appropriate changes to the charter. Those would be appropriate if they were handled in an appropriate way, and that is open discussion with the public, the required public hearing, and being able to vote on each of those issues.
Just for clarification, when you say appropriate changes, you're not saying that the changes they are asking for are appropriate. You're saying giving the appropriate choice to the citizens to look at each and every requested change.
And to participate in the,
Right.
the devising of those.
Right.
I'll give a prime example.
Sure.
Okay. So the current charter states that the city can't sell a property that is a value of more than $1,000, and it cannot lease property for more than a one-year term. Without approval by the
Right. So it can be
by
done. It just needs to be done through a specific process.
Correct. And that's one that I've talked with you about and other
Right.
mayors about, that probably needs to be adjusted. So say that it's $1 million worth of property, and the council can sell property that's under that value. Anything over, then that has to go to public vote. The same thing with the lease. A year is too short of a time period. I think a 3-year lease would be certainly fine, and then anything over 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or whatever, to be brought to the public to decide that. You know, this could be regarding the lease of our municipal services, such as the water and sewer facility. Which is
a hot topic.
And that has been discussed. So, is it right for the council to approve such a lease without the public's consent? And I think that would be a fine charter provision to change. The 25-person rule.
Can we just go
Sure,
back
ahead.
to that, if
Yep.
you don't mind? Under these bundled proposals, which really are not clearly out there for each citizen to look at, would that fall under this whole change of governance where if they brought in an administrative city manager, that city manager could make these decisions on their own?
I think that's been a question on both sides. I've seen that from both the yes and the no. A real confusion as to exactly what this shift in responsibilities ends up doing. And that's the other failure of this rushed process.
Correct.
If this were done in open committee meetings with the citizens and a member of the council, then those questions would be thoroughly vetted and answered, and they would have a clear description of, why we're changing this, what authority that will imbue upon the city manager, and also what it's removing from the authority of the mayor.
So the charter, in all due respects to everyone, belongs to the citizens.
It absolutely does.
It belongs to the citizens. It does not belong to even the elected officials, to the employees, okay? It belongs to the citizens. So what I'm hearing, and please, if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, is this all or nothing vote, okay, is actually going to reduce direct citizen control because of the way they have to vote now and their lack of understanding and the way they have the right to vote because of this bundling. So can you elaborate a bit more on that? Because this charter belongs to the citizens.
Sure. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that there are fundamental, this proposed charter makes fundamental and sweeping changes to the operation of the city, the way our officials are elected or appointed,
Correct.
the removal of citizens' rights,
Yes.
and they also said, you had an opportunity to make some changes, in these public hearings, but little was changed in anything that was already proposed. One small change that they made was in this change of our petitioning rights to change it from a 500% increase in the number of signatures required to petition to 400. So thank you so much for that.
Material.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. And that particular clause is fundamental and is in the charter, fundamental to our citizens' authority, and has never been abused. Why that particular law in the charter, or many others, were even considered for removal or change, is not been discussed with the public.
Well,
They did not participate in those choices. They would have looked over some of these and said, we don't see why there's a need to change. Leave it. We don't see why there's a need to change this. The council, and specifically the mayor and council member John Manette, they devised all of these on their own. While they say that they pulled them from other cities and such, well, those aren't our
towns.
Yeah,
Not cities.
Towns. Those aren't our governing principles. We are to decide that. Just because those passed muster in those communities doesn't mean that it passed muster here. And then to say that you don't get a right to vote on it, that's just dismissive of
the
our
city
concerns.
is not a not-for-profit. This is not an advisory board. These are people who are in control of creating and changing law. Okay, this is a city. It is, once again, not a not-for-profit. You don't change a governance structure with some knee-jerk reaction by newly elected officials who, apparently, what did 2 weeks or, 70, 80 hours spent on something like this? This charter, when I'm kind of hearing all the time, oh, it's a 100-year-old charter. That is not true. It started, there's been changes. This charter, okay, was ignored. But then when mayors, starting with Charlie Pronto, came on board, and then myself, we understood the charter. So this nonsense of, oh, people don't understand it, it's not clear. Well, those with legal backgrounds do understand it, and it's very clear. And so do the citizens. So don't insult them.
Exactly. And I've studied the charter thoroughly, and frankly, it's been impossible for me to transfer what we have lost to what is being proposed. The complication is beyond the average citizen's understanding, and then to deny them the ability to vote on those changes is unbelievable. I want to also bring a point up too, is that many of the recent issues in the city here were not brought forward by the council or the mayor. they were brought forth by...
It's the mayor's agenda. We need to get that very clear. The mayor creates the agenda. Council members can ask to have items put on the agenda, but if the mayor brings it out, he pretty much directs, or she pretty much directs what the agenda is. Then, of course, there could be additions and deletions, but a charter change, that's monumental. That's changing. So go ahead.
And so what I'm looking at is citizens have been involved in our local government to the benefit of this community.
100%.
And a couple clear examples would be the recent election when you were elected, when Mayor Barnes was run out of office by the council members, specifically and the city manager. They were going to appoint a new mayor on their own.
I remember that.
And so the citizens had the ability to challenge that, and they did, and rightfully so. Another issue was when the city was taking in millions of gallons of toxic chemicals and dumping them through our wastewater treatment plant, being partially treated and discharged into the river. Citizens battled that issue with the council and were pretty much ignored. And it took a local environmental group to sue the largest corporation in this state in order to get the city to stop polluting our lake. That was citizen-led. The same thing with the recent issues with our water and sewer financial debacle, as well as the mismanagement of funds on the city's level. Those were issues that were brought forward by citizens, and in some cases, repeatedly over years, to try and get the council and the mayor to look at those things, and were ignored. And now we're faced with this. This whole thing of the solution of our finances and the water and sewer has been a plight on the taxpayers. Okay, it's maybe not this council's fault, but it wasn't them that came to the conclusion that these things need to be addressed. It was the public.
It was the public brought it out, and when I was in there, and believe when I looked at it, and we started this open investigation, and we started to bring all of this public, and we used the current charter, which gave the authority,
correct,
finally was being used appropriately to look at these. And then when the new mayor came on board, and I believe with his political campaign, said he was going to continue this, but changed his entire directive once he got in there, which is his choice. But you don't come in there and say, oh, I'm going to make a charter modern, when that's just buzzwords, because you don't take the functionality away from an appropriate, strong, very well-written charter that has some things that could be changed through ordinances or rules. You don't do something like this. But go ahead.
And the continuation of citizens' requests. Prior to the public hearings on the charter. And the charter itself, the citizens brought up the case that this was a rushed process. I mean, it was very clear to us and to the public that this process takes time. And looking at the other communities throughout the state that have taken the time to set up commissions to review charter changes, did so, rightfully. I mean, that was the way to do it. And it took some time. It took, half a year, 2 years in some cases. And to revise all of our laws like this, to give it just a few weeks of consideration is just ridiculous. That request fell on deaf ears. And this has been the problem with the councils in the cities, not listening or respecting the citizens' view on these things. The same question came up with regards to, are these votes going to be, are they called for these votes to be put on the ballot, item by item, to be voted on? That wasn't even acknowledged when that was brought up to this council. And as far as I know, there wasn't any open discussion of that. I think, when we moved to an Australian ballot, I think that we lost a great deal of our interaction with our political parts. There is no longer any open banter and public discussion, which I think was a huge loss to all the cities that have adopted the Australian ballot. We used to have town meetings where these issues were voiced by both sides, the councilors and the mayor and the citizens, to flesh out the best resolution. We've lost that. And then we've lost it again by our voices being muted, and then now being allowed just one vote on multiple laws that affect the community. It's a difficult time when our local elected officials disrespect the views of the public, and they say, "Well, we're not." And the fact of the matter is, when you devise to force a vote such as this upon the citizens, you are disrespecting them.
Well, I agree with you there. And I think the takeaway that I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm misinterpreting this, is that you want to be very clear that the ability to protect the citizens' rights and votes remain intact. And by doing that, every single amendment proposed should be looked at thoroughly, should have the voice of the citizens in that, so that they can ask enough questions and be heard. You don't put together task force on things because your little buddies are going to vote the way you want, and then say, I'm not going to put together this type of issue for the citizens on something I don't want to hear conflicting issues on.
Yeah.
You just don't do that.
Or something that is just so important. I mean, this
it's
is not
monumental.
Yeah, this is not like getting to the bottom of the financial issues or the water and sewer. This is the establishment of laws that are going to serve this community for the next 30 to 40 years. They may be challenged, over that time, but that is a fact. As our current charter has served us, so will any new changes to that charter going forward. And so those decisions should not be taken lightly. If this is voted down at the ballot box, it just reverts back to our city charter, which has functioned for us.
It's actually a very good charter. It's a strong, clear charter.
Yeah.
Things can be changed, but it doesn't have to be done in this monumental short term.
Yeah. And the argument that it somehow is restricting development and such. I'm going to remind people exactly what businesses over the last 50 years have come in and have either prospered, gotten too big and moved on, or closed. So Vermont Teddy Bear Company, that was a national brand that was based here. Bogner Clothing, one of the most respected brands in the world for clothing. RDI Call Center, the Numia Medical Technologies built business. Louis Garneau, built by Newport. Columbia Forest Products, Trax Inc., Pool and Grain, Pool and Lumber, Galvion, and countless other small and medium-sized businesses that all have come to this town and functioned or been attracted to this town by our elected officials under the current charter.
The current charter it does not throw businesses away. I mean, we're not Act 250. We're not, the current charter does not force that. And how on earth, if you can answer this, if you can, can turning the charter into a change of governance, the way they are being proposed to do so, is going to fix economic development. I mean, it's going to harm it, because the bottom line is the charter amendments are so restrictive on economic development. Just using buzzwords doesn't work.
It's what works is putting in the work it takes to attract local businesses.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And while it doesn't, and neither do these changes solve the housing problem, and neither of these problems are going to be solved tomorrow. So the rush and the push to make these changes, again, has not been explained to the public. What is the urgency of making these changes? Why so many changes? Why now? What will we really gain from it? Mm-hmm. Just to say, oh, we're bringing you into the new era. Progress for Newport. Well, I believe in progress for Newport. I believe that it is difficult. I understand the housing process quite clearly, and
yes, you do.
A change in the charter is not going to change that process. It's going to take work on both the citizens and the city council and mayor to develop strategies to attract new business. And these things don't do that. When you mentioned about Charlie Pronto, when he was mayor, this is exactly what he and his council did. They went out and they
did the waterfront.
Yeah, they did the waterfront. They went out and they solicited businesses to move here. At this point, what my real concern is about the current businesses in town is whether they'll stay here, and that's something that the city council and the mayor need to look at. With no connection to the charter whatsoever. Just what do they need? How do we provide those services? And the same thing with the citizens. There's nothing in here to provide tax relief for them. This is in the...
And that's where when after Charlie Pronto came and then when I went in, my focus was on taking the charter and putting compliance in place and controls in place and stopping the misuse of funds and how the accounting was being done. And you have to put that structure in place. Then your charter is strong and followed, and it works. And then if you find one or two oddities, discuss them. Bring the citizens in.
And it was a failure of the accounting methods in the city. It was also a failure of the previous city manager, who exploited their authority in moving and shifting funds in and out of accounts that shouldn't have taken place. But to get back to what the burden is that should be being addressed on the citizens is that we just went through a huge taxpayer bailout. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. We had huge increases in our water and sewer rates. There's an increase in this year's budget because of shortfalls created by previous administrations. The state's going to be pushing another 11 to 13% tax on the citizens here. There's increases in the cost of everyday goods that people are dealing with, from fuel to food, and even housing increases. The changes in this charter do nothing to improve those situations for the citizens. And that's really, if you want to spend time doing something, city councilors and mayor, then put the time and effort into those issues and find ways to curb those costs in order to find other mechanisms to attract businesses and or support the businesses that are currently here. And then what's coming down next year, I believe, is a tax reevaluation.
Correct.
That's going to be massive. And one other thing is that there's some things that I don't like, like the sale of property and such that's in the charter, and these councilors may say, well, we would never do that. We wouldn't sell Gardner Park, or we wouldn't lease the water sewer facilities. But they're putting that provision in for future charters,
trusts, right.
and not charters, but future mayors and council members to consider that, and that being an option on the table. So they're not thinking the long-term effects of what they're trying to change here.
Or perhaps they are. Perhaps by putting that in, it kind of guarantees their seats going forward, because who would run?
It's challenging. I think that if this charter passes, I think there will be a number of people that will run in the next election.
If this charter passes...
I think so, because I think they're going to feel disenfranchised by what this council, every single member, and the mayor have done to them.
So I have a question with that point that you brought up, because I disagree with that. I think that why would anybody possibly run to be the mayor with this change in governance? Why would anybody want to sit on the council with this change in governance? Because they can't put it back until they bring back an amended charter.
Yeah,
so they have to live
Yeah.
with these new adjustments. So, I mean, if you want to just run around and be the mayor and kiss babies, that's fine.
Well, you're talking about these new adjustments, and that brings up a really clear question, and that is, the members of this council and the mayor haven't even, at the time proposing this, hadn't even served 7 months of a term.
That's my point.
Yeah, they haven't even served 7 months. So they didn't even have the opportunity to deal
with the
in
situation.
front of them with most of these charter laws.
That's correct.
Never been before them. Why they have this thinking that they know better than 100 years of law and citizens' approval,
and prior mayors.
In the short term that they've been in office, it boggles my mind. I can see them bringing up reasonable changes and proposing that to the public, and then putting it on the ballot. But just to outright line through, every single law that we have in the city, because, well, maybe it's, maybe we don't agree with it, or it's not right, but it's just not been vetted properly.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. It hasn't been vetted, and the bottom line is they're in there too short term.
If they were experienced, if they've been sitting there for 10 years and said,
or
you know what, we've been dealing with
experience
doing in public
law
service
or public service.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what we have there right now.
No, and then to be of the opinion as representatives of the citizens, to deny the citizens the opportunity to approve these or disapprove these proposals, shows their inexperience. It may have not been presented as an option to them. If it was, it wasn't discussed, which it should have been. And it just shows that they don't understand what a city charter is to begin with.
I had a resident contact me who agrees with your points, and said, once this genie's out of the bottle, you cannot put it back in. It's going to be difficult to get this genie back in. So step lightly here. I remember words to me, in my career going forward, because I always asked for advice from legal counsel or those within the law. I had a judge who said to me, here's some advice I recommend. If there's a doubt, when in doubt, don't.
Yep.
And that's how you should approach it. Be more conservative. If there's a doubt, don't. Open it up, take each line, let's look at it. But I have high concerns about the process and the review, and I have very strong concerns about how the legal advice itself was being done, because, you know, when there is a grave understanding with conflicts of interest, that in charter advice, sometimes a city attorney's dual role in drafting and finalizing the proposed charter changes actually is a conflict of interest. And I know that we need to use caution there, them going into meetings and giving advice and then drafting and giving advice over years, which conflicting advice, having their own issues that they have to deal with. Maybe their advice is to protect their own issues because we've had conflict of interest before raised. So we have to use caution here as well. Have you thought about any other legal actions that could happen, petitions or whatever going on?
Yeah, you know, that's a really good question, because, you know, coming into this whole proposal right at Thanksgiving and the holidays, and this being dropped on the citizens, those of us that pay attention to what the council is doing, have voiced their opinions on this and many other matters, were really caught off guard, and remedies to what was being forced upon us were difficult to find. In other words, you know, how do we slow this process down? Can we petition to have this postponed and have it reviewed properly? You know, things such as that, and legal approaches. You know, the process of it being sent to the Secretary of State and then to the legislature. You know, are our voices, you know, available there? And the clock was ticking, okay?
Right.
You know, within 2 weeks they had 2 public hearings, all during the holiday seasons. We're trying to, you know, even understand what's being proposed, let alone how to get the council to steer, you know, in a direction that was more open to the citizens' input. So, you know, a lot of wheels spinning at the same time, not knowing the laws in the process, having to learn that, you know, in such short order. And what it came down to is, you know, I found clearly in the law that that bundling these laws into one single vote is not the way the law reads. And I decided to challenge that.
Okay.
Because it couldn't be more clear in the state statutes that the legislature provided for a process for the citizens to vote on each and every proposal that was brought before them regarding the city charter. There's nowhere in that law that it suggests or enables the council or anyone to bundle those laws to be presented. They bundled them. I believe that that's a violation of state law. And so I filed a legal challenge to have that reviewed, which, as far as I can find, has never been disputed in the state.
Has the city been served with that challenge?
The city was served last Friday.
Okay, and has the city come out and told the public that it's out there? Or has the city responded, or is it
I
just...
am unaware of if the city acknowledged that or not.
I see.
I have seen that it was written about by an editorial recently.
Okay.
I believe it was mentioned that I applied the suit. And, you know, and my suit is just to clarify law. It has nothing to do with stopping the vote. I believe the citizens have the right to vote, and willing to hear that out. It's just whether that vote was lawful.
So
And-
you're asking for declaratory judgment, which is not asking the city for financial relief or anything. You're asking
No.
for a clarification
Absolutely.
by a sitting judge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on this very major issue.
Yeah, I believe that it's cut and dry in law. I don't know how. If someone's interpreting this differently, such as the council members that should have, and I hope they did review the law and applied it, the same with the mayor, and or if they were given advice that this was a process that was allowable, I believe was unlawful. And even, I think the overriding question here is not if the law provided the council to effectively bundle this into one vote, but why?
Why?
Why would you do that?
What was the intent?
To the citizens who have a clear legal right to vote on these provisions individually and make those choices? Why would you deny them that right? And that's what this one vote, this is my main opposition, is the one vote.
Correct.
I don't think that I would be here. I probably wouldn't be challenging this
right.
proposal at all if I had the ability and my fellow citizens had the ability to vote on each one of these issues individually and determine their moving forward.
The understanding of any ramification or progress that could come from.
I don't agree with the majority of what's being proposed.
But then you get to vote.
Exactly.
As long as you were able to understand
Yep.
every single change.
And
but when you don't do that, you don't give that to the people, and you try to manipulate the law somehow to cover that up, then it makes me step back and go, whoa.
And if my fellow citizens voted against something, or voted for one of these provisions that I was totally against, that was their right.
Correct.
The majority decided, my fellow citizens, the majority of them decided, yes, we will agree with this, and I would stand by that. But not that they're being given or they're being forced into a choice that is undesirable. And that's why these anti-log rolling, which is what's called the bundling and combining laws, flow throughout the country as established laws in those states. And like I said, 86% of the states, have these to stop this. And the Supreme Court in the state of Vermont also frowns on this practice.
Correct.
Both in the legislature and in public policy. So why, when it's such a profound citizen's right, on to something that is the foundational documents and laws of the city, would you deny the citizens the right to vote on those changes? And that's what's happening.
Well,
here.
that's the big question, is why? And when, as I said, if there is still a why out there, then don't.
I think that, yes, we can get to change a number of these charter provisions. Sure. I think that voting no here will enable us to go forward and set up a citizens committee with representatives from the city council to go through these changes. And maybe we don't dig in deep. Maybe we look at the surface issues that this council and others have said, well, this is bubbling, and we feel that we need to change it. Look at those first and say, okay, next election season, we'll put those out for change. But we're not going to dump all of our laws without thorough review and allow a couple members of a couple elected officials to devise all the laws that are going to rule us going forward and give us one vote. We can do much better than this. It will be much better for Newport to do this in a fashion that involves the citizen's voice in the decisions that will move the city forward and will satisfy the laws going forward to multiple generations of of council people and people we elect in the future.
Speaking to that, the other concern is that the current mayor is putting videos out there with AI, using AI, and has pretty much came right out and said that he's feeding documents to AI. So when you do searches on AI, you're going to get his position on why your charter should be changed. And there's laws out there that federal and state laws that need to be looked at, because AI is a serious issue right now. And so
Sure.
That's why you want the citizens to see it all. I also believe that under the statutes that there's supposed to be a line-by-line posting in each of the voting booths of every single change in the charter in that amendment.
Yeah, and that's another, enormous question, and that is, why burden the public in that way?
Correct.
If there's a handful of reasonable changes to be made, then it's easy to put that forward and people can have a reasonable expectation of what they're voting on. Putting out pages upon pages of changes and referring to state law as taking the place of taking the place of some of these provisions, not providing those, not giving the citizens ample time to really consider how those state laws, which can change without our consent.
That's correct. And do change.
Yeah. Placing that burden on the citizens is just irresponsible. I think, if there was like 5, reasonable, solid changes that need to be made to the charter that were vetted by the citizens and, in open dialogue, determine the path and placed on a ballot, then I think that would be reasonable. But putting together something that it's like, how many people do you know that read all of the conditions when they're signing up for a new website of some sort?
Right. None.
Here's the 15 pages of consents and what we're going to do with your information, whatever. 1 out of 1,000 people?
Maybe.
1 out of 10,000 people?
I would go more.
We'll check that. So they're going to so they're not going to take the time when they go into vote to take these 25 different pages of legal changes and look at them and determine that I should vote yes or no on all of this. It's just not within the capacity of even those that have a broad understanding of the current charter.
Well, that's correct. And then you have those who have an intimate understanding of the current charter and are flabbergasted that somebody would bundle something like this to do a change of governance, which makes you highly skeptical, because the citizens are losing their rights, in my opinion. And that is something we should never let happen, especially as elected officials.
Yeah, and they talk about modernization, but yet there's numerous things that could be in this, which would make a charter even greater, which would be such as we will review a charter, and one of the charters that they reviewed has this in there, but they didn't put that one in, and that is every 10 years or so we will review the charter with a committee of citizens and determine whether we need to make changes. This community has a abysmal voting record as to the participation of voters and such. So elected officials, I think, one mayor's election, I think we had 3 votes separating all 3 candidates. So only a third of the voters put, a new mayor in place. Only a third of the electorate. Okay, why are we not considering ranked choice voting?
Why not term limits?
term limits, are reasonable. They
Many
put,
things that the
Yeah.
citizens want.
Well, they put in here, the state provision for removal of office.
I saw that.
It's an impossible
Meeting.
threshold to even meet for the citizens. So that's just wasting citizens' vote on something that is meaningless. It'll never happen.
And
was gonna say
that's what's
this.
ingenuous. That
Well-
is the issue, because these issues cannot be fleshed out one by one.
And there's a great number of very bright, and engaged individuals in this town that could contribute.
I agree.
Very thoughtful and progressive advancements in our charter that have been totally overlooked because of the short order of it being reviewed just by a couple of individuals looking at other charters around the state to say, oh, well, this is cherry picking. Well, this would be a good one for us. This would be a good one for us. But those weren't chosen by the public.
Yeah, I think the key too is that the current charter was not used until the past 2 years. It started to be used, and controls were put in place in the internal operations. And without actually continuing that process while you are simultaneously having the citizens come in and discuss changes that are needed and have that really wholesome, well-vetted, highly
Engaged. Yep.
engaged is a great word. Okay, process going on. This scares me.
And let's step back again to what I said about the citizens' involvement, in serious issues in this town, and their voices not being heard, or not being listened to. They heard them, they just ignored their calls and their pleas.
Right.
And the same thing has to do with the big hole in the town. At the time that these things were being proposed, there were citizens that were standing up questioning the city. And this, among other items, has been an ongoing problem with the city councils, is that their failure to do due diligence in investing in the time to look at these things. Somebody's bringing a boatload of money to town. That sounds great. Do what you want with it. A simple Google would have found that the biotech facility that they were proposing here, that the CEO was in jail for fraud. There are telltale signs that could have avoided this big hole. And then even the mayor denying us the requirement to fill that hole in and make it a park-like setting that was required in the Act 250 requirement for the developer, with the excuse, well, we already have, a park just down the street. It's like, that's not the point. The point is we've got a big, ugly
point is
hole
law.
for the last 10 years because they didn't lift a finger to require the contractor to do what they were explicitly required to do should they not build on that site.
And that takes us back to, we have a current charter, follow it. First, follow it. Once you start to follow it and you follow the law, and also city attorneys, which ones are you using? Which ones have conflicts? Which ones don't?
Yeah.
Very important. Okay, you don't just use attorneys who are telling them, this is what I want you to find for me, make it happen.
Yeah.
You get attorneys who are there to give advice, and you need to understand, as the elected official, what further questions to ask once advice is given.
And you don't want hopefully the attorney did not suggest that this one vote path was right, because there are our attorney as well. They're the city's attorney.
No, they're the city's attorney. They're
Yeah.
not the mayor's attorney. They're not the individual
No, but I'm
alderman's
saying
attorney.
that their decisions, affect
this-
the electorate.
You bet, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
represent the city, the electorate, right? That's who they represent.
Yeah.
But it's very important to use appropriate constitutional attorneys.
Yeah.
This is a constitution.
And to your point about, following the current charter, okay? So this newly appointed council, in the first weeks of their terms, violated the charter.
I understand. I saw that many times.
By appointment of John Manette to the council. The charter clearly states that once the citizens call for a vote to fill that position, their authority ends. They no longer have the authority to appoint that and fill that position until an election. Okay, that is eliminated. Their use of their authority, or their believed use of their authority, violated the charter right there and then. So I don't put it past them to not follow the law explicitly, let alone write the laws for the public.
I agree with you 100%. This is something that is very serious. It is the Constitution of a city.
It is our Constitution.
Okay, and a Constitution should not be taken lightly, and you don't flip it. Okay, and you don't say, well, I'll flip it and worry about it later. Okay, pay attention.
So
Go ahead.
think of this. Think of our state legislature striking the Constitution for the state and saying, you know what, we're going to propose a new one. Here you go. You get one vote to accept the entire new Constitution. Do you think that the public in the state would stand for that?
Well, we sure hope not, right?
I think there would be anarchy.
It could happen. And that's why you want to be very careful with newly elected officials coming in with a political mindset.
I don't mind if their authority is to write ordinances. That's all fine and good.
I'm with you there.
Those can be changed or whatever.
That's right.
Internal workings of the financial structure of the city, the accounting methods and such like that, when those need to be addressed, yeah, absolutely. Other issues that are in their authority to address, but
you have to know what's in your authority to address.
Well, exactly, and to know your limitations. It's dumbfounding that we don't have a better. Well, and here's another thing that we could, that's missing from the charter is that we could say that going forward, that the charter, each provision will be voted on by the public. We can put that in our charter. There's literally nothing, unless it conflicts with state law, that we can't put as guidelines, or in some cases, financial guardrails.
Well, that's the purpose
that
of a municipal charter, of a city charter, is to put the structure specific. Okay, that's why you do not come in and undo a very strong charter. And I've lived through that charter, read that charter, worked with many attorneys to interpret that charter. Even before I ran, I made sure I understood that charter. And you never understand it completely, because every time a situation comes up, there's always going to be a legal nuance. So to flippantly rewrite it without a vetting process is just, as I said, stunning to me.
And to totally change,
and insulting to the citizens,
and to totally change the direction. It's like, if you want to improve the verbiage, that's fine, but to change the entire direction of that law.
This is new governance. This is entirely different. So
exactly, it's not. Yeah.
And quite honestly, on the verbiage, I mean, I've read the charter, and it all has appropriate subjects and verbs, and I haven't found each line to be too difficult to understand. But right now, we just have about 3 minutes left, and I want it to be your 3 minutes closing us up. Okay. So tell the people what you want them to hear, and it's all yours.
Well, I think it's just clear. Vote no on this charter. Move Newport forward by giving us the opportunity to revisit changes to the charter, if that's something that the public really feels a need and necessity to do. Do so with a charter committee made up of citizens and members of the council, the same as done with other towns, Essex Junction, Burlington, Montpelier, Winooski, South Burlington, Brattleboro, all had charter review committees.
Rutland.
Okay? Rutland, even for small changes in some cases. Some of them have ongoing committees. Warn those changes properly within the law and give the voters the right to vote on them, their own conscience individually. And we'll get the laws that the community wants to guide us forward. This charter is not a mechanism to move the city forward by any means.
Right.
It does nothing to enhance the citizens' rights of this community. It does nothing to curb the taxes and issues with our wastewater services and expansion of those fees. It does not stifle economic development here. I mean, we've seen that over the last 50 years. We've had plenty of businesses move in here. We are dealing with issues with regards to housing and growth of businesses and having employees in the area. We do need to work with our surrounding communities to lift us all up. Helping our surrounding communities and them helping us will lift everyone's boat in this lake. And just give us the opportunity to do this right. I think that we all in the city want to see the city prosper and move forward. This action by the council is not one that will do that.
Well, I want to thank you, Jay, for being here. This has been Jay Walsh as our featured guest. He has been out there for you as the citizens on many levels for many years. And it's up to you to make your decision. It's a big vote coming up. So I ask that you all do come out and vote. Whatever your vote is, don't disregard a vote. Come out and vote. This has been Linda Joy Sullivan. Thank you, NEK-TV, for letting me bring you Straight Talk Vermont.